It seems that whenever I read a Sally Rooney novel, I completely forget what her writing is like, and I fall in love all over again. And it also seems that with each new book, she somehow manages to pinpoint exactly what's the most pressing consideration in my life at that very moment. And so the work she produces manages to touch my heart in the best possible ways. I don't think I could ever reread her novels because they come so specifically at the point where I seem to read the most. The exception was probably normal people, but Intermezzo here has done it again. It has taken the spot as the novel that I needed the most at this specific period in my life because it's about loss. It's about love in all its manifestations. It's about messy, so messy, complicated relationships with family, with friends, with loved ones. And most of all, it's a tender collection about our humanity. Less dialogue, less events, and more introspection and pensive self-musing. Today we're talking about Intermezzo. At its core, it's a story about two brothers who are grieving the loss of their father. It has been a slow loss, a battle in hospital, and yet when the day comes that their father is no longer with them, it still manages to take them unexpected, surprised. And at first glance, it seems like nothing changes, right? They move on, they go about their daily lives, they accept condolences, sure, they struggle emotionally, but life moves on, and so seemingly do they. Except something has irreversibly changed, and it has changed in their attitudes too, not just towards each other, but towards their life, towards everything. And these two brothers, at first glance, it seems like they're diametrically opposed, like they couldn't be more different. We have Peter, the hotshot corporate lawyer who manages to deal with human rights cases and does pro bono work, and his life is this constant cycle of wealthy events and similarly rich lawyer friends who go out and party, this perfect social life. And then we have Ivan, this 22-year-old chess genius who's recently lost his winning streak. The resentment that he feels towards Peter, the way that Peter seemed to brush off the death of their father and move on. And then, of course, Peter's attitude towards Ivan. It's complicated, but he's not an adult yet. Surely he can't deal with the loss of our father. The novel unfolds in parallels, following both Peter's daily life and Ivan's. Structurally, this novel has a lot of fluidity, because the novel alternates in its points of view in its chapters, but in a single chapter, there's no heading. It's not like this chapter's Ivan, this chapter's Peter. Rather, it's plenty of paragraph breaks, plenty of pauses, plenty of interruptions and switches from one to the other. And at first, well, throughout the book, it's very clear who's who because they have their distinct voices. Sally Rooney always manages to create unique characters that breathe from every single page, that seem like they're right in the room with you. But here, slowly as we move on, we see the ways in which they become more similar. Even the ways that they view the world, even the ways that the chapter is told, seems to assimilate more towards each other, but yet also diverge and move apart. So they manage to be unique, but they don't see the ways in which they're similar, they only see their differences. It's only towards the end of the novel as well that even we begin to see their similarities, because at first we perceive Ivan solely from Peter's lens as this abnormal young boy who's this like chess prodigy, who's unsuited to living in the real world, who's still a child. And we see Peter from Ivan's lens. Oh, he's so condescending, he's so focused on losing every part of his personality and just easily moving into this lawyer life, adopting a rich accent, talking the way that cultural people do. He so quickly picks up all this art and culture stuff just to fit in with the wealthy. And what's the point? What's the values that he has? We see them the way that they see each other. And only as we get to know them more, as they get to know themselves more, as they move into this process of introspection, do we see the ways in which they're also very similar, the ways in which they're both human, the ways that they make mistakes, the ways that they try to reconcile them. It's a truly fascinating character analysis to see why Peter views Ivan as such and why Ivan views Peter as such, the prejudices that they have towards each other, but also the ways in which their lives unfold almost in parallel. As Peter's life declines, Ivan's goes on the rise. When Ivan has his low spots, his drops in his life and in his happiness level, Peter suddenly increase. The ways that they mirror each other even in something like their love life, which is a very important element of this book. When Peter dates a younger girl Ivan's age, and Ivan begins to date an older woman Peter's age, their relationship towards each other isn't ever really explicitly discussed. There's not one single moment when Ivan says, "Oh, I view Peter as such." It comes together in fragments, the same way that they tell the story to their loved ones, in fragments too, in revealing detail about a past event, or about an accident, or about a situation where they argued or where they made up. And it's in these highs and lows of their relationship. It's in their arguments, and then in the making up, and then in more arguments, that we see the myriad of possibilities in which their relationship could unfold, the more steps that they take. If this was one of Ivan's chess matches, I would say it's one where there's a big dance between the opponents, because one is the more older, the more experienced grandmaster. At the same time, there's one who wants to make concessions towards his younger opponent, and then the younger opponent in his rivalry is so determined to prove the older one right, but caring for the older master, caring for who he is as a person. And so the two take each other's pawns and serious figures, and then sacrifice figures, and then move forward, and then move back, and it's never clear who's winning in this rivalry. Is there a winner? And from the audience, we sometimes see the audience's perspective, like almost as if the camera pans away from the match to the audience, and we see their worry, their encouragement to play more fairly towards each other, to respect each other. And there's a metaphorical clock, the way that they have it in chess matches, and one makes a move and he hits the clock, and then it's the other brother's turn to make a move, and we shift the chapter onto the other brother. And then sometimes there are pauses where the clock suddenly stops and the brothers don't talk to each other, don't think about each other, move away. The game halts just as suddenly and quickly resume. And so it's a very complicated chess game that they're playing, and the entire novel we wait with bated breath to see its resolution, to see whether there's going to be a draw, a stalemate, some kind of pause on the game, a temporary reconciliation, a decision to come away mutual winners or mutual losers. And that audience too are interesting to observe, not just the chess match that unfolds, because they encourage them and push them to extreme emotions the way that only messy entanglements could. When does a one-night stand become a full relationship? When do you realize that you found your soulmate? And what do you do when there seem to be two people you love, and you love them for completely different reasons, but your very heart and soul calls towards both of them, and you can't choose when you know that you should? Or should you? Like, take Peter, for example. I said before that he likes a young girl Ivan's age, and they truly have a strange codependent relationship that they both recognize. He basically fully supports her financially. He takes care of her. He cooks for her sometimes, and she in return is happy to have a physical relationship with them, but it's never because she doesn't want to. No, she longs for it. She's attached to him too, and she's considerably younger. She's unemployed. She's basically lost and unmoored, like a wandering artist in a corporate world who finds herself just perplexed by the entire situation and by the lack of creativity and by the strangeness of it all. And then he has his intellectual equal, maybe his intellectual superior, a literary academic who he has loved all his life and will continue to love, who can't be with him physically, who he longs to touch but knows he shouldn't, who he loves and who he admires for her intellect most of all. And these are some of the most beautiful passages in this book when he talks about her intellect, the way he admires the way her mind leaps and bounds and comes to conclusions and analyzes and criticizes. And yet this younger other girl, he doesn't just admire her for her physical appearance, he admires her for her attitude, for the way that she carries herself. It's a very complicated relationship, and for anyone who has ever been in a complicated relationship, or one in which they know that they shouldn't carry on but yet do anyway because they can't bear to separate themselves away from this person, they will see themselves here. For me, I saw myself in a different aspect of this book. I saw myself in the loss that was described, because 2024 was a difficult year for me. It was a year in which I lost someone who was very dear to me, and for a while I couldn't read books that were about this topic of death and loss because they were extremely triggering. So when this one came up, I kept pushing it away and thinking, no, I can't be reading Intermezzo right now. But strangely enough, this was comforting to the point where I felt healed and ready enough to move on. There's something about this novel being genuine and not trying to be anything it isn't. Unlike Beautiful World, Where Are You, with its healthy dose of irony and talking about novels and the author's place and all of these elements that make it absolutely delightfully ironic but also not exactly genuine, Intermezzo doesn't try to be anything it's not. It doesn't make claims to being the greatest novel of all time. It doesn't make claims to have revolutionary takes on relationships. It's just very tender and genuine and real, and there's something about it that makes it comforting enough for you to empathize for the characters, to feel for them, to feel for their self-reflection, and at the same time reflect on yourself too. And that process has also been very meaningful in reading the book. The novel doesn't try to be anything intellectual, yet somehow it manages to make fine commentary on academia, on relationships, on society, slow paragraphs, shifts of view, well thought out details, and stream of consciousness. Is this the modern Virginia Woolf? This feels like a novel that manages to express exactly how the modern mind works. All of the distractions that we have, from self-loathing to self-love to adoration to hubris to egoism to family relationships that don't seem to work out to the digital world. And also, of course, the literary references. Hamlet. I could make an entire video about Hamlet and the parallels between this novel and Hamlet, but rather I urge you to, because I want to keep this review spoiler-free, to encourage you to form your own opinion and form your own take on this novel, and to not spoil it all by giving key detail away. I encourage you to read this novel, and then if you want to, I have a long series on Hamlet in extreme detail, so maybe you can tell me yourself which parallels you see in the comments to this video, but it was an absolute delight to unpack this novel. And Hamlet is also a novel that seems to follow me around the same way that the figure of the dead king, the old king, is always in the background, always in the mind of Hamlet. I mean, Gertrude, the stepmother who moves on so cruelly. It's literally their mother who has divorced their dead father and married to another family. Don't be fooled by the novel's simplicity. It's easy to dismiss this writing and to say, well, surely this brings nothing new to the table. Surely this is just another novel. And maybe it is just another novel, but it's not at all fair to say that it doesn't bring anything to the table just because it's simple and modern and comments on modernity. So don't be the kind of snob that Sylvia and Peter make fun of in the novel. There's a good quote, I'll attach it somewhere here because I need to find it in the book. It is indeed a feast that Sally Rooney lays out for us. And it's the type of feast where you don't think that you're hungry in the slightest, and then you come to the table and realize just how hungry you are. The aperitif is the comparisons to Hamlet, the grieving for their lost father. The starter is the ways that they move on, the ways that they progress and they try to live their life as before. The main course is their relationship to each other. The second main course is their relationships to the women in their life. And for dessert, you have its messy and maybe not so messy and other times neat resolution to this novel, served throughout the entire meal with delightful wine, paired perfectly to the course, made out of delicate chats between an older lover and a younger lover, conversations about mothers over lemonades, careless texts that show a lot of care, and heady flashbacks and memories. This is not a novel that you would call great and revolutionary, but there is certainly much to take away from it for your heart, body, soul, and mind. And an intermezzo in music provides respite. And this intermezzo also provides a respite, not in music, but in life. So thank you all for watching the spoiler-free review. This is a novel I deeply enjoyed, and I have been a fan of Sally Rooney for a long time, so I've been waiting to enjoy it for a long time. And I can only hope that this review encourages you to pick it up, and that you will be as lucky as I have been, and it will come into your life at the right moment. So thank you so much for watching this video, and see you next week.